Welcome, Holly Larson, to the Dish with Dina podcast. I'm so excited to speak with you today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
A lot of the people that do listen to this, whether they are nutrition students, dietetic interns, newly credentialed dietitians, or even just anyone looking to kind of breathe a little bit more life into a direction that they want to go in within their profession or their career, I think are really going to benefit from hearing what you have to say. So let's just start first with a little bit of an origin story. What got you into the field of dietetics? And then we'll talk a little bit too about how you started specializing in what you do now.
I appreciate the chance to share my story. And I hope that it is helpful for people to know that there are a lot of paths and a lot of ways to have an impact. I think everyone who wants to become a dietitian or is a dietitian is because you want to help people. And unfortunately, I think things are still kind of like they were with 20 years ago, where clinical and long-term care and food service are still the main options presented, and those are good options. But if those aren't the right fit for the way that you want to make an impact and to help people in the world, I hope that by sharing my story, that can help people to know that there's so many ways to work and make a difference and have an income as a dietitian. So my story began at the tender age of 10 when I wanted to become a vegetarian, but I'm one of four kids. And now that I'm a mom, I understand this in a whole different way, that she didn't want to have to cook a special and separate meal for me to accommodate what I wanted. Um, I'm really stubborn. And I kept asking. And eventually, at age 12, she kind of threw her hands up and said, "Okay, you can be a vegetarian, but you have to do the research and learn how to do this in a healthy way. It's your job to figure it out. And it's your job to figure out your meals. I'm not cooking for you." And I love that that's how she answered it and empowered me to learn and take ownership of this decision. And I appreciate that about my parents, that they just have a innate belief in our ability to figure stuff out and to give us the space to figure stuff out. So for a long time, I was a vegetarian. I'm not anymore. But that was the origin story of my interest in nutrition. I knew that I wanted to be a dietitian for a very long time, but it just took far longer to find the way in which I wanted to be a vegetarian. And so I tried a bunch of stuff. So, um, I've been a WIC dietitian. I've had a private practice. I've worked for a national company that help kids who are struggling with neurological stuff going on and managed a program. I've been a teacher, and I kind of stumbled across writing. And so at a time in my life that I was going through a divorce and some pretty hard stuff, I bought this copywriting course as kind of a my life really sucks right now, but this is my promise to myself that it's not always going to be terrible and hard. And I needed my full-time job to be able to qualify to refinance my house and things like that. But it was like, there will be light at the end of the tunnel. And there was. Everything's much better. But I started my writing business while working a full-time job and going through all of this kind of big, hard, transformative stuff in my life. And when I had things were settled down and I had um, enough in savings and enough clients and like figured out enough of my process to be like, okay, it's time to take the leap. And here we are.
A lot of themes come up in the last like 4 years that I've been doing this, where first of all, proud of your mom for setting boundaries, right? Because boundaries comes up also a lot on our end too, especially for those of us who are juggling a lot of different responsibilities or trying to manage a full-time job with maybe doing something else or moving into the direction of a side gig, a side hustle, or another different area that they're going into. So I'm glad that your mom allowed you the freedom and flexibility to find your own path when you were discovering the world of vegetarian eating, and also set boundaries with, this is kind of where I have to stop and allow myself to give you space because I don't also want to add one more thing to my plate. So kudos to your mom for doing that. The other thing too that comes up a lot in these discussions is fearlessness. So it sounds like the things that you were dealing with at the time where you were in periods of transition, but you were still seeing, like you said, the light at the end of the tunnel. It's very hard sometimes for people to detach from the security that they might have, or if they're going through some form of turmoil or a change of a chapter in their life. Can I ask you just a little bit about maybe the support that you had at your time? Were you flying solo, or did you have a good network of people that not only were you looking to enter into a different field or channel of what you wanted to pursue, but who were kind of like your team members at the time of who you can bounce ideas off of, just to give some people some ideas that they're not alone in these things?
When I first became an entrepreneur, it was a really long time ago. And I had just moved from Washington, D.C. back to Ohio, where I grew up and now live again. Um, and I started a little private practice in my little college town, and it was just long enough that ago that there weren't all of these Facebook groups, there weren't as many examples. Instagram wasn't a thing yet. Um, so like things changed fast. So I felt a lot more isolated and trying to figure things out. Um, but it was in that time that I kind of accidentally discovered that I kind of like writing and I'm kind of good at it. And I still had plenty to learn and still have plenty to learn. But that little seed was planted. And then this bout of entrepreneurship was after then a time of working as an employee for 6 years, and then I was looking for things to be different there too. And so this time I was very intentional about trying to set boundaries and developing community because there is a lot of freedom in entrepreneurship and there's a lot of scary stuff of trying to figure things out and being brave and making mistakes and not getting so freaked out when things don't work out because you have to try new stuff. That's how life works. And someone referenced mistakes in business and life and calling it life tuition. And I just love that. Of course, not everything's going to work out. Like, you just can't go in expecting every single thing to go smooth. That's just not how it works. But if you have that patience and that attitude that allows you to keep trying and to keep finding the things that do work.
It depends on how secure somebody might feel, how, as you said, I too sometimes like being somewhat not necessarily alone and isolated, but having time to reflect and really go through things. I was never a really big study group type of person. I don't like taking exercise classes. I'd rather go run by myself. So there's nothing wrong too if you know who you are as a person. Instead of, yes, we want to maybe push you outside of your comfort zone, but if there are areas where you're like, this is where I thrive, and I would rather not feel uncomfortable, then by all means, embrace that about yourself and keep building upon that. So, Holly, will you explain? So, I have a background in publishing. I don't know if I've ever shared that with anybody on this podcast. No, I
I
had to
knew
have.
that.
I had to have because, yeah, I had a couple of guests on a while back that who were both my coworkers and now my friends from back in my publishing days. And my background was also BA in communication. I loved writing. I loved doing all of the things that were somewhere revolved around media and the communication world. So for those people who might not be aware, will you define what exactly it is that copywriting is, and then share a little bit too about the services that you provide within that construct?
Copywriting is the opposite of content writing, which content is writing that's meant to entertain or inform, like a novel is content, a play is content, a blog could be content, depending on something. Copywriting is words that are meant to encourage people to take action, also known as sales writing, which then all of a sudden, when you say that, people tend to get the icks because they're like, oh, I don't want to sound salesy. I don't want to be icky. But friends, if you are an entrepreneur, you have to get comfortable talking about the services that you offer and good copywriting is very different than sleazy copywriting. It can be anything. Copywriting can be really values driven, or it can be sleazy. So, of course, I recommend not sounding like a sleazeball when you're writing. But part of this, and when I teach people writing, I have a course and I have a mentorship program and I do copywriting. A lot of it comes down to mindset. So we have to remember that we have something of value. Our service helps to transform people's lives in whatever way that you do your work. And so, what a gift it is for the people who need your services to find you and to engage with you. And so, good copywriting helps to encourage people to get to know you and to build trust with you and to be ready and excited to engage in your services, which means money, it's buying. So, that's okay. So, it takes practice to talk about money and your services and to talk about what you offer. But with practice, we get better. And so copywriting is all of those different words that an entrepreneur needs to build their presence and trust. So blogs, if it ends with a call to action, can be copy. It's educating, informing, building connections, and asking them to take the next step. Website writing can be copy, a landing page, emails, an Instagram caption, all of those can be copy if they are encouraging people to take whatever that next step is.
As you started moving in this direction of providing a service, are you only focusing on the dietetics profession in the sense of like you're trying to pinpoint some sort of niche voice that all of us have somewhat in common, but then also allow people to be authentic in whatever avenue or direction that they are taking? So, what is maybe a quote unquote typical client that you might have, or a typical discussion that you might have with a person who wants to be a client of yours?
Almost all of my clients right now are dietitians, and I love that. Because my path has been kind of varied, I have experience in a lot of things professionally as a dietitian, and then layering that with my training and expertise as a copywriter and my SEO training means I am a good fit for dietitian entrepreneurs. And what I love about having different clients is that they are doing different kinds of work. Some of them are private practice dietitians, some of them are more in business, like B2B. And it kind of feels like playing dress up when I'm writing for them because they all have their own voice. Some are a little more formal, some are a little more playful, some like to use the F word, some don't. So, like, it's fun to just kind of get into the zone with them to channel their voice because the point of being a good copywriter to your clients is they get to publish this work under their name. That's the idea. It's not my name on it, it's theirs. um, they feel like it sounds like me. And I've had other clients who have said, you are the first person who's written something for me that sounds like me. And it takes practice to be good at that. So if someone is interested in doing that kind of work, what I do is get to know people on Zoom and read other stuff that they've written and pay attention to. Are they more formal? Are they more casual? What kind of expressions are they using? Um, so that when I write for them, as much as possible, they're like, oh, it sounds like me.
If you were to ask somebody who might not have any clue as to what first steps to take, or I should say, what would you tell somebody? What is important to have? Because some people are maybe not super savvy, they don't want to be online. It is a necessary evil in the world that we live right now, at least for people to find us. So walk us through a couple of things of suggestions or tips that you might give somebody, but also could you clarify the SEO discussion, because that stands for search engine optimization, but what does that actually mean and how does that relate to what it is that you're working with your clients?
I might start with the SEO
Yeah.
question. SEO stands, as you said, stands for search engine optimization, which that tends to make people feel more bamboozled, not less, because that sounds complicated. But the whole idea is we're just playing nice with Google. So Google's goal is to have the right things come up in search so that when people are looking for the answers to questions, they're getting answers from experts that are relevant, that are up to date, and all of those things, and by experts. So Google really is on our side. We're dietitians, we are the nutrition expert. And so that's important. So SEO is all about the algorithm, like how does Google decide from the billions of blogs which ones end up in the top 10? And so we don't need to be like mad or frustrated at Google. We just need to kind of learn to play by their rules a little bit about what things do we need to do to tweak how we write, how we decide what to write, how do we link things together within our website, which, like anything, it sounds a little tricky and it's a skill to learn. But like my friends, if we've done the Krebs cycle, we've done OCHEM, we can do SEO and we don't need to know everything. I don't know everything about SEO, but we can learn things and get there so that our work has staying power. It's working to attract people to your website as opposed to having to pay ads to get people to your website.
Oh my gosh, you said Krebs cycle, and I immediately got a chill up my spine. I am cracking up. I really listen, for people who don't even know what that is, I'm just going to tell you to look it up because I don't even want to explain it right now. When it comes to somebody having just a presence online, this is something to as a consumer myself, if I'm looking for a service provider or I'm looking to purchase something online, it makes me absolutely batty when I have to go through what just either is not enough or far too much information. So are there certain things that you would also address or again guide people with what are the things that they can focus in on if they feel like maybe they're getting a little bit muddled up or confused about how this is all laying out in front of you or them, I should say. What are some things that can help them fine tune to really get to understand what that voice is that they do have if they're struggling, if they've never gone through this direction before and they're starting from scratch?
It is 2024. You need a website. And I'm not going to apologize for that. I think you can have a business a lot of different ways. And some people maybe just have Instagram or things like that, or start on Instagram. That's fine. But life is fluid. We get to adapt and change and add. And if that's a place where you feel more comfortable starting, great. But if you want to keep doing this, make a website. That's the first thing people do is to Google and look at your presence, look at what you have to offer and see if you are coming across as someone trustworthy and can help them. But this is really where copywriting comes in, that as dietitians, we care about our credentials far more than anybody else. Like why there's so many like non-expert people doing nutrition counseling and things, and you can get mad about it, or you can keep your eyes on the prize and just do better. But that's where copywriting can come in. Like we like to say we are dietitians, and we are, and we should be proud of being a dietitian. But that in itself does not build trust and build a connection that someone says, oh, this is the person who can help me. It's storytelling and explaining things and connecting with what's bothering them that lets people get excited to work with you. So we need to be online. We don't need to be everywhere. I think we need a website. We always get to change our mind and edit and flow. This is not like chiseled into stone, it's online. And then from there, once you have a website that you like and you're publishing some blogs so people can get to know with you and engage with how you help and things, then you can expand to other places, Pinterest, TikTok, wherever that might be. But we also don't need to be everywhere. Like every channel has its own skills and strategy and techniques to show up well. And at some point we need to actually like do the work that gets us paid. So we don't need to be everywhere, but we do need to some places, and I would recommend a website.
All right, let's talk about it. AI and ChatGPT and all these fun things. I already have my own thoughts about these things too, because yes, somebody can easily put through an engine about creating a meal plan for themselves, but the nuance is missing, the expertise is missing. What about your field? How are you, or are you nervous about some of these things as well? What are you doing to navigate the new way that this is kind of entering into people's lives, whether it's through your clients or anybody in the future that might be curious about that?
Great question. Um, AI does not really bother me. I was using a tool called Jasper and still do use a tool called Jasper that I started using like 6 months or a year before ChatGPT like came up and blew up everything. And I was honestly kind of surprised by how much people were freaked out by it, of like other writers. So my analogy, because of course lots of people ask me because I'm a writer. They're like, is like your job over? Like, and I'm like, no. My partner is a carpenter. And he is a very good carpenter, and he uses power tools with his job. So he can cut wood with a power saw and screw in screws, which he doesn't even say screws, he says fasteners, because that's his actual lingo. He can use those tools, and it is way faster than using hand tools, a hand saw. Um, but if he doesn't have a brain in his head and know how all of these pieces fit together and how to measure correctly and cut precisely with the power tool, it doesn't actually save you any time. You're still just going to make mistakes, but make mistakes faster. And he fixes a lot of his coworkers' mistakes because he's much more experienced than a lot of people that he works with. So that's how I feel about AI. I need to have a brain in my head. It's a tool to do some things faster. But if you don't know copywriting strategy, if you don't know your field, like someone kind of step in and do dietitian-y stuff and are not a dietitian, they're just going to make mistakes faster. And AI is only helpful for an outline and a first draft or like meta descriptions. Those are the worst to write. I use tools for that. So I just feel like AI is a tool in the toolbox. And if someone just wants like the garbage that an AI tool will spit out, if you don't have a good prompt and you just get kind of ick stuff out, they were never my client to begin with. Not worried.
Yeah, I so appreciate that because I think that what you were talking to about the mindset discussion earlier is that that's really the thing. It's like you're fine tuning, you're honing in on a particular population that you know you want to work with. They're going to find you and you're going to find them. Anyone outside of that is off to do and going in a different direction, and it's not meant to be a good fit. So that's something too, dear listeners and dear viewers, is not to stress out over things that you're worried about, whether it's something like this where I'm sitting in a very saturated big city, I'm one of many dietitians here, or whatever it is that you're doing that you feel like you're in competition with somebody, focus in on your expertise, your skill set, how you can market yourself, how you can broaden that channel, the opportunities too. So, Holly, will you talk a little bit about marketing in that sense too? Like, what are you doing to get platforms, get the word out there? I mean, obviously, I see you a lot on some of the Facebook groups now, but tell us a little bit about, is it more in-person stuff? Is it word of mouth? Is it virtual spaces that you feel like you really have more of an ability to do outreach there?
When I first started my writing business, I found my clients through cold emailing, which is kind of just what it sounds like of reaching out to people and be like, hey, would you like a writer? But there's skill even in that too, to say, here's who I am, here's how I can help you, and kind of draw the picture of what is it like to be able to delegate this work, delegate it to someone whose whole job is focused on that, so that they can do the work that they started their business to do. I like to say with being an entrepreneur, you can do absolutely anything. There are no limits. You can do anything, but you cannot do everything well at the same time. So you've got to pick and choose. So, like, I don't know anything about taxes. I hire my tax lady and I'm pleased to give her the money to know all the answers to that stuff so I don't have to do it. I don't want to. I'm terrible at graphic making. So I have my VA who is a little Canva genius, does all of that. I'm so thrilled and grateful to hire her to do that stuff so that I can focus on staying on top of copywriting strategy and SEO and reaching out and having life outside of work. Like, no one wants to work 24/7. I started by cold emailing to get my first clients to say, here's who I am, here's how I can help, this is what life is like. From there, most of my clients have come from word of mouth, because when it's a good fit with writing, it's a good fit and they're going to tell their friends about it and their colleagues. I'm good at SEO, so people are finding me when they're searching for a nutrition writer. I show up. And then by leading with value, I try to be present in Facebook groups, like you said, leading with value so that it's not always just coming across as sell, which it's important to say, like directly say this is available. Sometimes that's part of it, but that can't be most of your messaging. So it needs to be a chunk of your messaging.
When I talk with other people in the health and wellness world, and we're specifically speaking about conditions or patient populations, I always ask, what's like a hot topic that's really grinding your gears these days? So, whether it is related to the world of copywriting or anything else, is there something that you would like to speak to or address that you feel like maybe you're seeing come up a lot? That could be something confusing or something that maybe is exciting to share or something you want to dispel.
People tend to think that writers, you're just kind of born as a good writer or you're not, in a way that they're like, well, of course I can't do that. I'm not a good writer. And I think that is BS. We can all learn to be good writers because really being a good writer is getting in touch with who you are in your own voice. And that's the beauty of getting to kind of tune into your most authentic self. And that's who your clients want to work with. Like your dream clients are looking for you. And so copywriting helps to connect with them, which is so fun and so very different than the kind of writing that we learned how to do in school, where we sound like a robot textbook, which is not fun and not good copy. It's evidence based, for sure, but it's not fun and it doesn't inspire people. I think we have an assumption as a field that we have to be so formal to be taken seriously. And I'm just like, we're working with real people. Like real people want to work with us, dietitians who are real people too. So it's good to make people laugh sometimes, or if you're in a gut health dietitian, to make a toot joke sometimes. Like it's good. Um, People like that just makes a conversation a lot more comfortable. You're not friends, you don't need to overshare, but you do get to be a real person.
I very much appreciate this discussion because I teach as well. I teach students in undergraduate and graduate nutrition courses up here in one of the colleges in the Bronx. And
Mhm.
one of the things that we do talk about is authenticity, especially even when they're giving me the assignment. So they're sending something in that feels super formal, or they're trying to impress me in some way. And so, I mean, there is the thing of, okay, there's 30 students and I have only so much time in a week. I'm not reading through 17-page dissertations when I only need 4 bullet points. That's number one. Number two, it's so obvious to me that they're just taking into their brain the textbook knowledge and like regurgitating that versus really diving deep that this is a human person you're talking to when it comes down to it. So we do try to do some role playing and I do try to get them to soften their language. I also get them to use more images and descriptions versus just words. So instead of, iron, you need more iron in your diet, like explain some of the discussion around pictures that are iron rich foods. So just examples that I'm given that kind of tie into that authenticity is that you don't want to end up working with somebody and having them come in and feel completely uncomfortable. Like this person is so robotic and sterile, and I'm coming to you with my health and wellness needs. So I love what you're saying about that because I think if I am finding somebody online, if I'm a patient or I'm being referred to somebody and I'm doing my, my background checks on who I'm working with, I definitely want to make sure that they're a good fit. And if they're very sterile and it feels very steely, that is definitely not going to make me feel comfortable. I do like to sauce it up a bit. And I also feel like destigmatizing some things too, Holly. So even, if we can talk a little bit about that as well, like you said, we don't necessarily have to divulge everything, but I so appreciate the new generation that I think I've been seeing a lot more of in the dietetics profession who are talking about things like disordered eating behaviors from their past personal experiences, or like me, I talk about my mental health diagnoses all the time, or discussions around body image. Sometimes people will see us in a profession as being perfect or the police of their habits. And so I really love that we can add some personality to what we're trying to send out there in that virtual space or when people find us online. Otherwise, it quite literally just like it looks like copy paste across the board. Like we all do the same thing. We're all trained on the same thing, but it's about finding that unique part of your personality or your background that really connects you with the person who wants to work with you. So I very much appreciate your insight into that. Thank you.
Food is so vulnerable. I think plenty of clients or patients would sooner show you their underwear drawer than open up their fridge. We still, as a profession, have this perception of being like the food police. Like, I'm in a little college town in Ohio, and I've literally had someone steer their shopping cart away from me because they were embarrassed, like, didn't know what I like, and I promise I've never done judgy things like that that would warrant that kind of reaction, but people are it's so vulnerable to talk about your choices because we have so much BS around food beliefs and diet culture crap and all that stuff. And like I published on LinkedIn me holding a donut and I said, just PSA, I'm a dietitian and I had a donut today. And the fact that this might come across as news breaking is bullshit, but people have all these assumptions. So just to like bring it down that like dietitians are real people, we like donuts, like we're human beings, we're not dead. And so health is about, balance and finding those things too. Like it's not all or nothing, but people still really believe that in really rigid ways. And I have not yet met a dietitian who actually acts like that.
I absolutely agree with you. I mean, maybe in, 30 years ago in the most clinical of settings in a hospital place where, you're truly saving people from dying, like maybe we don't want to start joking around with things like that and we're a little bit more rigid, but I definitely appreciate everybody's vulnerability. I think there's strength in that, as I tend to say a lot of times in these discussions too. And also just being able to let your guard down. I don't believe in that there's a hierarchy. I'm qualified in certain things that I can help people with, but I'm no better than you because know the science behind our nutrition discussion. I still you'll pry my pasta from my cold dead hands as far as I'm concerned, and I don't care what anybody talks about with their carb fears. I'm very much like you. I have a donut, me eating a donut on my website, so I'm with you with that. Holly, let's talk a little bit about the future of you and things. Like we're talking also in the near future, you have some events going on. So share with us a little bit about that. And then maybe even talk to us too, what you see for yourself down the line or how you might grow, expand your own business, your own clientele.
One of my kind of passion projects, if you will, is talking about money and finance and salaries. And the reason that I want to is because I personally have made plenty of mistakes around money. And money is still such a taboo topic and it shouldn't be. And secrecy hurts a lot of people with money. And it's like people feel like they're not a good person if they don't know how to navigate eating well. And we wouldn't ever think that around a client that's skill building. We need access and skill building to create this health. And it's the same thing about money, really. We need access, we need skill building. Um, my first job was for a WIC clinic, and it's like little tiny dietitian, uh, like trying to get my first job, and I knew that I needed to negotiate. And as a woman, I know that we are paid less than men, and it was important to negotiate, but I didn't know how to negotiate. And so I had this minute conversation with who became my boss. They offered some pitiful salary. I didn't know how to do a survey to know just how low that salary was, but I also needed a job. I wasn't in a position to wait a lot. I had bills to pay. And so I said, is this negotiable? She said no. And I didn't know what else to say. And the thing is, I was humiliated because I'd come in saying, like, I know I need to, but that didn't mean I knew how to. Um, and so I don't want other dietitians to feel that way. I want to empower our field with more open and transparent conversations about money. And just to be able to talk about and quantify the value that we provide. All that to say, I'm hosting the second annual Dietitian Money Conference. Will be September 24th through 27th, 2024. I have 18 speakers who are registered dietitians from 3 different countries on a really wide range of topics on everything from resume skills, so we can land the interview, negotiation skills, so when we're in the interview, we can negotiate better, How can we network to better connect with the next or your first great position? How does policy impact our paycheck? Because it's huge, even if you're not in private practice or not engaging with insurance. The insurance reimbursement rates are a kind of thing that like other money conversations are centered around. And I'll share a fact that I've learned through this research is that when Medicare was enacted in 1965, dietitian services were not covered. And so, with reimbursement from Medicare, that positioned dietitians as an expense to the hospital instead of revenue generating for the hospitals. And it's been a game of catch up ever since. So, when, of course, the Academy is advocating for us, I think sometimes people are like, what is the Academy doing? They're doing a lot. And we need to advocate for ourselves too. It's not their job to like gift us a salary in a basket. Like we need to advocate for ourselves too. But part of that is being able to quantify that not only does working with a registered dietitian improve patient outcomes, and it saves the hospital money. So because of the peer-reviewed research that has been published because of that, that first allowed insurance companies to say like, okay, well, we'll cover some diabetes and renal stuff first. And then from there, that is expanded with the Affordable Care Act to be like, oh, wouldn't you know, people who are empowered with nutrition counseling, not only are they healthier, it saves insurance money, so they're willing to pay for it. So it's been a long road. There's a lot of things going on that are making it we're better positioned to advocate and talk about our work. There are fewer people coming into the field, which means we are having a shortage. But for people who are in the field right now, that benefits us because we have more leverage to advocate for fair compensation. So the conference, 18 different speakers, almost all of them have a live Q&A, so you can attend the session virtually and then literally submit your questions and engage with each one of the speakers. And it's approved for CEUs. And I'm just really excited about it. We just need to get more comfortable talking about money from every different angle. And this is my attempt to make a difference.
This is so, so, so needed, and also not something that we learn about in school, obviously. We're taught
Mhm.
taught just the textbook stuff and the information, as far as the science goes, but not marketing ourselves, and I think that negotiation discussion is big. I know when I speak with a lot of my students or I precept interns, one of the pieces of advice I'll give them is even if you have to quote unquote settle for a certain salary because that's what it is here and that's what the facility is paying, at least try to figure out if there's other things that they could maybe reimburse you for, whether it's going to conferences or paying for your yearly expenses for keeping your credentials up and running, or if there's any other kind of benefits that they could provide to you. And maybe give yourself a deadline. Like, I'll work here for 2 years and then I got to go, because odds are you might not be able to move up incrementally in salary versus leaving with experience and walking into a whole new place and starting from scratch. So I cannot wait to see and learn a little bit more about what this conference is all about. So obviously at the time of this recording, if anybody's listening to this live right now, you will have the ability to check that out, register for it, and learn a little bit more about that. Holly, is this something too that would be, as far as registration is concerned, would it be available also if people can't attend all 3 days live? Like, do you have a recording deadline that you'll make that available to anybody who's interested?
Yeah, so the sessions are released incrementally each day, and then the
Okay,
live uh, Q&A sessions are in the afternoons each day, and then everything is recorded, and attendees then have access to it for a full year.
wonderful.
And then there is also a private Facebook group for all of the attendees so we can talk to each other. So
Yeah.
it is virtual, but I wanted to make it as community focused as possible.
As possible. And I know what I usually do in these episodes, the podcast and so on, is I'll include notes and your website and all the links to whatever you are on social media, because you also have chock full of resources available online for people who might not be able to, or just wanted to maybe give a taste of what you're doing right now, that they can check you out. So I'll be sure to link to all of those things. And I just want to ask if there is anything that we did not cover, anything you want to share, because we had quite a lot of conversation going on there, but I'm wondering if I missed any questions to ask you.
I'll say for the money conference, I have an early bird price of 247 and then a regular price of 497. But I also have a student price of 97 because it's very important to me that I make it as accessible as possible. So if you're a student or if you're someone who just can't do the early bird price, please just register for the student price. I'd rather have you there than not. And then for people who are interested in chatting about copywriting, my main gig, I have room for more clients. I'm a teacher, so if you would like to learn how to copyright for yourself, I have a paid course. And then I also mentor dietitians with publishing blogs for their business through the RD Blog Club, which is fun. And so in the blog club, I'm teaching, holding people accountable to writing and publishing one blog for their business a month. Because I'll tell you what, when you're an entrepreneur and have a billion irons in the fire, the first thing to go on the back burner until next week, Monday, and then never happens is writing your own blogs. So on your website, you're like, hi, I started a business, a blog, and then nothing. I am providing support and accountability into community for people to fit publishing new content that's good in terms of it's good copy, it's good for SEO, it's helping to grow your business in a way that's not taking over the rest of your business.
Yeah, that's so important that if they wrote one in 2017 and then never came back to breathe any new life in it, it's like, well, okay, thanks, I guess. That's very, even whatever, I try to also encourage people to define consistency for what is realistic for them. So maybe it's not
Yes.
posting 5 times a day or 5 times a week. Maybe it's once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month, but something that people can find you and know that you're consistent at it so that they're waiting for things to come from you and they're following you to see what's next that you're going to share with them. So I appreciate that accountability discussion.
Yes. And then I also have, if someone is just kind of curious about writing or you're a student and don't have a lot of cash to go around right now, I also have lots of blog posts just to teach writing skills. And then I also have a free 1 week writing course that's on my website. So if you want to sign up for that, you can get one lesson a week and you learn some really good skills and kind of get a vibe check on me if I'm the right mentor for you or not, which is great. Dietitians are awesome. So in any way that I can help to amplify our voice, our impact in the field, I love what I do.
That is the most important thing is loving what you, it doesn't have to be in love every day, but knowing that you get excited and passionate about something and you have a service that you're excited to share and that just like you said before, you're doing well because it's word of mouth and people are coming to you and you're building the expertise in that field. So again, the takeaways for anybody who might be listening to this, who might not be in the dietetics profession or might not want to go into entrepreneurship, the whole point is having a toolkit or a strategy for yourself to advance in some way if that is what you are interested in. We
Mhm.
often talk about a job versus a career. If you want a job, okay, show up, punch the clock, and go home. Okay, fine. Nobody's judging you. But if you want to have a career, if you want to develop your professional skill set, if you want to grow your network, people like Holly are there to help you, support you, give you some foundational skills, a blueprint, and a pathway so that you're not by yourself. You definitely know that there are things that you can check off that list. And every whatever it is for you, if it's every month, every quarter, every year, you do a little bit something different or new, then you're going to end up having that much more of a desirability in becoming an expert or getting that next job or landing that next internship. So I'm excited to see what people take away from this discussion, Holly. With the irons in the fire and you juggling a bunch of different things as well, can you share with us a little bit about what your non-negotiables are? Like, how do you manage everything and how do you take care of yourself?
I guess I'll be transparent and say I don't actually feel like I'm managing everything well all the time. My son is 2.5, and I have been, dare I say, bamboozled by how much motherhood and things were still pretty COVID-y when he was born. And so just because you have daycare doesn't mean you get to use the very expensive daycare because like everyone's sick and you get the message in the app like, no, we have hand, foot, and mouth. I'm like, whatever. So I would say I'm getting closer to feeling like I'm managing things. I don't know, I'm getting there. Um, I can't wait to see what the turnout is for the money conference. I'm excited about that. And I'm actually kind of delving into some private practice work. I wasn't ready to talk to anybody, and life just kind of it felt really unrealistic to have the idea of having client appointments when things kept, like my son was just sick a lot with daycare. So it didn't feel realistic. I'm ready to talk to people again. So I'm delving into doing some small private practice stuff, which I'm excited about.
I'm excited for you. And I really do appreciate your honesty in what you just mentioned too. Listen, sometimes things happen, right? We're either recovering from an illness or an injury, or it's that time of year where holidays are upon us and everything just feels like it's a whirlwind. Or in the case of what I was sharing with you before we officially hit record, where I'm coming out of one semester and going into another semester as an
Mhm.
adjunct, but then so are my students too. So there's
Mhm.
this structure of life right now where I'm just not hitting what I want in my sleep habits, my physical activity priorities are falling by the wayside, but it's temporary. And I think the real takeaway from that for me anyway is uh, try not to make it to happen too often, not to be a pattern. Like definitely, even if it's one weekend a month that you can afford for yourself, not just you, Holly, but anyone else who might be listening to this, allow yourself some of that time because you definitely need to replenish the stores that you have. Can't pour from an empty vessel, as the saying goes. So thank you
Yes.
for sharing all of that. Thank you for being vulnerable with us. And you sound like you're doing a good job there as a mama. So you have a lot of challenges happening with that, but I really give you a lot of credit, Holly, in juggling everything else that you got going on. So my final two questions of my podcast episodes are always a two-parter. It is, what is on your plate today? So as soon as we wrap up, what is the next thing that you will be working on? And then what is the next thing that you will be eating?
It comes to pasta, so you'll be excited. My birthday is tomorrow. So I am having a birthday dinner with my parents, my partner's parents. My brother is in town from Germany and he's flying back tomorrow. So we're having a really nice dinner in honor of both his bon voyage and my birthday. So when we are done with this, I'm going to be getting basil out of the garden to make pesto to put on top of some salmon. We're having homemade mac and cheese with so much cheese. I can't wait. I asked my brother, I was like, what do you really want? And he's like, really good mac and cheese. I'm like, done. Don't need to tell me twice. And then I make a kick-ass carrot cake. So I did the frosting on that this morning. So much cream cheese. So we're having that tonight. And then tomorrow, day of, I have some girlfriends coming over. We're gonna sit on our screen porch and I'm gonna screen Dirty Dancing and we're gonna eat watermelon. Exciting. Cocktails, obviously.
That is so fun. I love the fact that it's your birthday and you are coordinating all of this stuff. You're making food for everyone, and I love that you're going to be celebrating. What is the thing that you might be working on?
So my son is napping. So I heard him rustling. So my partner's mom is here for the party and to help cover this time so we could chat, which I'm appreciative of. Um, And so a little bit of party prep. We actually just got back from Michigan. I'm in Ohio and going to Michigan in the summer is just a delight. So we're kind of just having a chance to unwind, which was just really nice.
That
So I'm
brings in that ties in the self-care that, socializing is part of self-care as well. That's so important.
I love the discovery of witches. It was originally a trilogy. Then she wrote the fourth book, and then she just published the fifth book, which came out right before we went to Michigan. So I had pre-ordered it months ago, and then it just was lovingly delivered into my mailbox right before we went to Michigan. So I read a whole entire book, and it was just the best. So
Yeah.
not today, but next week I'll be in pretty high gear with kind of revising copy and stuff and promotional materials for affiliates for the conference to have to try and make it as easy as possible to talk about. So if anyone in their audience wants to join, it's an easy decision.
I feel like we've really run the gamut of a very robust conversation. You brought to this discussion so much great insight. I'm really so pleased that we got a chance to finally meet and chat a little bit more in depth. And I cannot thank you enough for spending time with us today. Thank you, Holly.
Thank you so much.